So it's actually been quite some time since I last did a proper matchup chart for A.K.I. So I figure it's time for the Season 3 matchup chart, in my opinion. Now, I've got some disclaimers here. Number one, matchup charts are very subjective. You probably will disagree, even if you play the same character as me. And they're also obviously shaped around the people who are good at characters in my region. And the final disclaimer is, for some reason, this says slight disadvantage E. Disadvantage E? Don't ask. Line breaks are hard, okay? I think A.K.I's matchups have actually changed quite a lot since I last did one of these. So starting with Ryu. Ryu, as we all know, got Giga Buff this season. I used to think last season this was slightly in A.K.I's favor, but I just feel like Ryu has become such a gorilla now that the slight advantage A.K.I had has kind of worn off. But I think it's even. I think Ryu doesn't have quite the corner carry necessary to cause A.K.I as much trouble as the other Shotos generally. It's usually corner carry. Obviously, A.K.I has very weak defense once you get her to the corner. So I still don't find Ryu as difficult matchup-wise as the other Shotos, but it's not as good as it used to be. I think it's gone from slight A.K.I advantage to even. Luke. I think A.K.I actually has an advantage here. Unlike every other pseudo Shoto in this game, Luke has not been given a gun since he got nerfed in Season 2. I actually think Luke's pretty bad right now. Like, this isn't a tier list, so I won't go into too much detail, but I actually think Luke's fallen off a lot this season. I don't think Luke is particularly scary. He doesn't hit that hard anymore, and all the Luke players have basically abandoned him to play better characters, so I don't think he's very hard for A.K.I. I don't think it's, like, free for A.K.I, but I think it's in A.K.I's favor. Chun-Li. Chun is a tricky one. I'm kind of hovering between even to slight disadvantage. I think I'm gonna go to slight disadvantage on this one, but only very slightly. Like, this is only very slightly in Chun's favor if the Chun is, like, fully equipped to deal with the matchup. If you haven't got lots of experience against good A.K.Is, this looks like a bad matchup for Chun-Li, but at high level, I actually think Chun-Li has a slight advantage because she can kind of do a lot of the same stuff as A.K.I, but takes less risks while doing it. So, like, both these characters have, like, slow fireball plus drive rush, but also, like, Chun has, like, she has a DP, she has more defensive options. Hazanshu is really annoying in this matchup. Especially Modern Chun, actually. I'm not going to make separate, like, designations for Modern and Classic, but I actually really have problems with Modern Chun in this matchup, more than Classic, because Modern Chun can just reactively punish so much of A.K.I's kit with, like, level 2 and stuff. But for the sake of this chart, I will leave Modern and Classic as a unified thing, but if I was doing it separately, Modern would be slightly worse. Jamie is also going up here. I think A.K.I beats Jamie slightly. I think she always has. I think A.K.I used to beat Jamie, I think, quite consistently. Like, it used to be up here. I think over the seasons, it's maybe got slightly harder for A.K.I, but Jamie just can't really deal with slow fireballs, just as, like, this is just a character archetype thing, you know? It takes, like, 3 or 4 drinks before Jamie becomes scary in the matchup, but A.K.I is scary from round start, so I just feel like the fact that Jamie doesn't get good tools to deal with A.K.I's kit until he's a few drinks deep just means that A.K.I has the advantage from the start of a round. Can you switch their places so they can face each other? Oh yeah, okay, there we go. Hop on Street Fighter 6. Guile is the first one going down here. Guile is a brick wall that is extremely difficult for A.K.I to get around. His fireballs are so much better than A.K.I's. And the other thing is that, on the flip side, Guile can also rush A.K.I down. Like, I feel like Guile wins this matchup defensively, but he also wins this matchup offensively. So, if I'm in neutral, it's so hard to get in on Guile. But also, on the reverse situation, if Guile wants to get in on me, it's not that hard. The only thing I will say about this matchup is that I feel like only really good Guiles make it difficult. So, like, I'm not scared of average Guile or whatever. I'm scared of, like, the top Guiles in the world because they really understand how to make that matchup uncomfortable. But if you don't really have a lot of experience in the Guile A.K.I matchup, you can't really take advantage of the weaknesses. But yeah, I think Guile is a really tough matchup for A.K.I. If Guile wants to come inside, he will. Please don't phrase it like that. Okay. Kimberly. I actually think Aki has a slight advantage against Kimberly. Kimberly has really good rushdown, but at the same time, she also has pretty bad defense. It's very much whoever gets the first hit wins, but I do think Aki has slightly better tools to control Kimberly. Anyway, moving on. Jury. Is this slight disadvantage? I think so. I think Jury is awkward for Aki. The low fireball is annoying because Aki can't power crouch dive through it. Any projectiles that travel on the ground. And Jury still has a lightning fast drive rush and a dive kick. And I'm sure you guys know by now, but just to reiterate, Aki does not deal well with any character that has a dive kick, generally speaking. Like, any anti-air that causes your air movement to, like, pause, even for, like, half a second, is horrible for Aki's anti-airs. So even if it's a relatively bad dive kick like Jury's, it's still annoying to deal with. What if Guile had a dive kick? Then I would stop playing Street Fighter. But yeah, I don't think it's that bad for Aki. I think it's a slight disadvantage from my experience, but I do think it is slightly in Jury's favor. Okay, Dhalsim. This is probably the matchup that I have changed my opinion on the most this season. And not necessarily because of Dhalsim's changes in Season 3, but just because I feel like Dhalsim players are really starting to get good at adjusting to that matchup. I used to think this was one of Aki's best matchups, but I really am starting to think it's even or even worse than that. It's become more annoying because they keep buffing float. So like this season they've made it so that like float has really fast startup. And Dhalsim can now like harass Aki by doing like long range normals cancel into float, cancelled into jump fierce. And like that kind of angle is very difficult for Aki to deal with. His crouch heavy kick punishes fireballs on reaction from like 2/3 screen. So this matchup is getting harder, and also Dhalsim players are getting better at it. Honda. I'm just noticing, am I going to put any character in like full advantage? Let me just think about this before I continue. Is there going to be any character that I put in like actual Aki advantage and not slight advantage? Yes, there is one. I can think of one. This is not going to be an empty tier, but it's going to be probably not very much in there. I think Aki actually does good against Honda. It's kind of annoying because Honda just spams stand medium punch 24/7, but that's not an issue with the matchup, that's just Honda gameplay. I actually lost to Honda relatively recently in tournament, shoutouts to Matt Hazard, but even still, that hasn't really shaken my opinion of the matchup. I still think that, like, Aki has good tools to control Honda, and a lot of Honda's defensive options don't work well against Aki. So, for example, like, EX Headbutt is very vulnerable to safe jumps. You can just do, like, safe jump into jump light kick and never have to worry about EX Headbutt on wake up. So I think this is probably slight advantage. If I was being a pessimist, I'd bring it down to even. But I'm going to stick it in slight advantage for the time being. Butt Slam is annoying. Stand Medium Punch is annoying. Headbutt is annoying. The thing is, Honda is an annoying character, but I don't think annoying translates to bad matchup. Ken. Slight disadvantage. This matchup hasn't really changed much since last season. It's actually got slightly better for Aki, I think, in some ways, because Jinrai is worse now, but in a way that is not fun to fight against. Like, not to go too far off the rails, but I really hate what they've done with Jinrai this season, where it's like, it's still basically safe on block if I block the Jinrai, but also if I mash, the Ken player doesn't get a combo. It's like the worst of both worlds. They've made it so that Jinrai is unsatisfying on defense, and now also unsatisfying if you're the Ken player on offense. It's like such a bad move, badly designed move right now. But anyway, I digress. Ken is the Ryu matchup, but with better corner carry, like I said earlier. One low forward drive rush with this character takes you to the corner from anywhere, and Aki doesn't have good defense, so that's just a recipe for a difficult matchup. You can kind of zone Ken a little bit with Aki. His EX Fireball's quite scary, but it's not terrible. I just think it's slightly in Ken's favor. Blanca. I'm going to go with slight advantage again with this one. This one's a little bit of a question mark for me at the moment. Similar to the Honda matchup, like Blanca is annoying, and he can certainly rob you incredibly quickly with his level 2. But in neutral, I feel like he's not too scary because basically the only reason that I feel like Aki players have trouble with Blanca is because you're throwing terrible fireballs, right? If you are in neutral against Blanca, and you throw a fireball, he just slides it every time. But the thing is, if you don't throw terrible fireballs and give Blanca players free punishes, The only real way that Blanka has of getting in on Aki is crouch, medium punch, drive rush. He doesn't really have any other scary approaches other than crouch, medium punch, drive rush. And I feel like when you've only got one good button at that range, it makes your neutral very predictable. So I feel like as long as I just sort of hover around the edge of crouch, medium punch range, there's not a whole lot Blanka can do to be scary. But like I said, if he gets a hit, level 2 can just kill you instantly. So it's not an amazing matchup, but it's definitely, I think, in Aki's favor. DJ. I think Aki struggles a bit against DJ, or at least I do. DJ can kind of overwhelm a lot of Aki's most solid approaches in neutral. So for example, most matchups in the game with Aki, if I throw EX Fireball and then Drive Rush behind it, there's not a whole lot you can do about that. It's kind of a relatively safe, although expensive, option. But this guy right here is one of the only characters in the game who can just completely ignore the incoming EX Fireball and overwhelm it with his own EX Fireball because it's 3 hits. His pressure is annoying. Sobat is annoying. Sway is still difficult for Aki to deal with. She doesn't have good buttons to stop Sway. Like, you have to, like, hard read the Sway and do Drive Rush. But yeah, it's kind of similar to the Guile matchup, I think, where it's like Aki struggles to get in neutral on DJ, but also she struggles to defend on defense against DJ. It's like a slightly less severe version of the Guile matchup. These charge fireball havers. Manon. I don't like this matchup. Honestly, I was tempted to put this down here, but I feel like I would never hear the end of it if I do. I just, maybe this is just me. This might be a personal issue for me. I can't tell if this is a matchup issue or a me issue, but I really do not like Aki versus Manon. The ranges that Manon controls are so awkward for Aki. Like, that distance in the mid-range where Manon threatens with stuff like stand heavy kick, or the overhead, or her jump heavy kick, is so awkward for Aki. Like, you feel like you're boxed in the corner, even though you're just standing still in neutral. She just operates at a really awkward range, and all of the things that Manon has, which are sort of designed to be punishable for most characters, I think Aki really struggles to punish. The spin is annoying for Aki. The thing about the spin, right? The ballerina spin, especially the EX spin, is that it's really fucking slow, which makes it really bad against most fireballs in the game. So, like, Manon cannot usually do reaction fireball punishes with EX spin, but one of the only matchups where she can actually do that is against Aki, because Aki's fireball has 52 frames of startup, I want to say. Not startup, total frames, in fact. Yeah, 52 total frames on Aki's fireball means that she can actually use spin as a semi-reliable punish, which doesn't work in most matchups. So, yeah, I really don't like the Manon matchup. Okay, Marisa. This matchup has gotten so much worse this season, and it's entirely attributable to one change. So this used to be, I used to think this was one of Aki's best matchups, and Marisa got a ton of buffs in Season 3, and most of them are good, but the one that really makes this matchup annoying now is Marisa actually has an answer to throws. They made it so that her wake up level 1 now actually beats throws, and that one singular change means that it's gone from like brain dead pressure on, yeah, Marisa's wake up. I used to get like autopilot meaty throws on this character all day every day and not really have to take any risks in pressure, and now I really have to like structure my offense. I can't like autopilot against this character, and if I make like one minor mistake while pressuring her and she gets like a stray stand heavy kick punish counter on me, it's just fucking lights out. Like, she's so explosive, and her defense got so much better this season. So this went from a matchup that I think Aki used to win to now one that I think she slightly loses. It's insane how much a wake-up option adds to characters, man. I mean, Street Fighter 6 has the most oppressive rushdown of like almost any mainline Street Fighter game. So any buffs to defense, I think, are absolutely game-changing because of how good offense is in this game. Even something as simple as letting this level 1 beat throws almost inverts this matchup. It's not just that, there's a couple of other minor things, like they made Superman Punch more consistently go over stuff, which is annoying for Aki. And they also gave Marisa better Oki off a few of her combo enders. Like, she gets safe jump off heavy punch target combo now. But yeah, I don't like this matchup right now. I'm struggling to find a consistent answer to Marissa. JP. This might be one of the few matchups where I'm actually feeling more positive about it this season. I don't know if this is just because I've got more experience at fighting JP. This used to be, I think, one of A.K.I's worst matchups. It's still bad, don't get me wrong. I still think it's bad for A.K.I. But I actually think it's not as bad as it was. The only thing that really makes this matchup chaotic is that JP's level 2 is the single best move in the entire game. But that's a video for another day. Outside of the level 2, you can constantly threaten drive rush in this matchup. So like, JP can wall you for like a minute straight, but all it takes is just finding one opening with like a drive rush or like perfect parrying a spike, and you might have just won the round. So it's still bad. Like, JP outranges A.K.I almost everywhere on the screen, and his hitboxes are all like disjoint and huge. So it's really hard to play footsies against him. But he doesn't feel as obnoxious as I used to think. So still bad for A.K.I, but not as bad as it was. Cammy. Where am I putting Cammy? Where will Caesar leave his judgment? It's not gonna be good. I'm gonna do this kind of the same as JP, actually, weirdly, with Cammy. Dive kick characters, as I've said a million times before, they cause a lot of problems for A.K.I. But I will say the one thing about Cammy that makes her not quite as obnoxious as the other characters is that I feel like her dive kick is quite one-dimensional, right? The only options Cammy has is either jump, like regular jump, or dive kick. So there's only like really two outcomes if she takes to the air, and it's difficult to deal with if she jumps. It's still hard to anti-air, but it's not quite as stupid as some other characters we're going to talk about later. No prizes for guessing who I'm alluding to right now. Her ground game's really good. Crouch, medium punch, drive rush, obviously, is one of her best buttons. She's still difficult to control with A.K.I, and spin knuckle still goes through fireballs. But yeah, I don't think she's quite threatening enough to be down here. All right, I don't know. Did anyone predict this? I said earlier about which character was going to go in A.K.I advantage. Lily is right up here. This matchup stinks for Lily. I do not see any way that Lily has of winning this matchup consistently. The power level of this game keeps increasing, and somehow Lily keeps getting worse, even though she wasn't that good to begin with. I think this character stinks this season, just in general. But even specifically against A.K.I, you just gotta rush her down. She can't do anything if you just drive rush at her. The only time this matchup becomes difficult is if you somehow let her get a bunch of win stocks. But to be honest, you should never be in a position where she's getting a bunch of win stocks. You know, if you let her run away to full screen and start charging wind, then you failed the matchup, basically. But as long as you just like hold your ground and don't let her either crouch fierce or run away to full screen to charge wind stocks, she can't really do anything against A.K.I. And she doesn't have any good answers to Fireball without wind stocks. So A.K.I wins this matchup basically everywhere on the screen. And the only lose condition is if you somehow let her get 3 stocks of wind. Zangief. Where's Geef going this season? I'm going to say this is even. If you're a Geef player, you probably hate me right now. I'm sure the Geef players are like screaming at me right now that this is like literally unwinnable matchup. I'm sure this is a very annoying matchup for Geef. Like, light whip, obviously, is very spammable against Geef. I can see why Geef players would be mad about this matchup, but you have to be patient, right? The kind of Geef players that just throw themselves at you like lunatics are not an issue, but like the really high-level Geef players that will just walk you to the corner cause problems for A.K.I. You can kind of zone Geef, but a lot of A.K.I's zoning tools also lose to Geef's charged heavy punch armor. And also, Geef has some good jump normals to beat A.K.I's anti-airs. Like, jump medium kick is really annoying to deal with. So, I think it sort of balances out where it's like, A.K.I can kind of zone Geef out, but also, if Geef gets an opening, he can just maul you. I think I'm going to say that one's even. Rashid? Okay, here's the thing. Rashid is 2 different matchups in one, right? I think Rashid A.K.I is actually 5-5, right up until the moment where Great Desert Storm is active, and then it becomes this. So, generally level 2 is not on the screen for most of the rounds. So I'm going to say it probably is an even matchup. But it's just a very weird even matchup where, like, he's manageable. He's got tools to deal with A.K.I stuff. Aki has tools to deal with Rashid stuff. If level 2 is on the screen, then you're probably dead, but also that's every Rashid matchup. But I think it's even. Ed is also even, I think. Maybe even slightly in Aki's favor. I'm gonna keep it even. I could see an argument for actually this being decent for Aki. Ed, I imagine, beats Aki pretty bad. I don't think so. The ranges that Ed likes to control are also ranges where Aki can sort of deal with it. So, like, the thing about Ed is that in a lot of matchups, Ed will just sit at the ranges where, like, his stand medium kick or crouch heavy kick, drive rush are threatening. But those ranges where normally Ed would be uncontested, you can just spam light whip 24/7 with Aki. Like, light whip is really good against Ed because it operates at, like, his most comfortable range, if that makes sense. So against most characters, Ed's long-range normals make him very scary at that distance, but Aki can actually kind of keep up with that. I think it's even. Now, who do we have next? I've already made a video about Akuma at this point. I don't want to relitigate the 9k health man. I'm just going to say it's this, obviously. This is the worst matchup for Aki. I could, if I was going to be extra annoying... I think I did this exact gag last time. I think I'm just repeating stale memes at this point, but like... Yeah, this matchup sucks. You can't stop Akuma doing Akuma stuff. You can't... There's no consistent response to Demon Flip. If he does Demon Flip, you just roll a d6 and decide if you've lost neutral, basically. His normals are better than Aki's in the mid-range. His zoning is better than Aki's. His air options are borderline unmanageable for Aki. This matchup is horrendous. The only reason that I ever win this matchup, basically, is Akuma players throwing and doing, like, stupid wake-up EXDPs. But, like, if the Akuma player is using their brain, this matchup fucking sucks. Slight advantage Bison IMO? You're trying to sneak that in there before we even start? I think Bison is really bad, actually. Here's the thing. This matchup is really bad for Aki, but also Bison has no defense, really. So you can maul him if you just fucking throw yourself at Bison and don't give him a chance to breathe. If I was gonna create like a mid-range here, it would be probably halfway between slight disadvantage and disadvantage. I'm gonna keep it down here though. I really don't like this matchup. It's the other thing about this matchup that's difficult to measure is it depends a lot on the tournament format. So I haven't really mentioned this with other characters, but I feel like in first to 2, Bison is fucking insane. Like, trying to adjust to specific Bison players' decision making in first to 2 is a nightmare. It's so hard to maul this character without getting mauled yourself. So I feel like in first to 2, it's here. And in first to 3, it's here because you get a bit more of a chance to adjust to your opponent's preferences. But most tournaments are first to 2, so I'm going to lean towards that. Terry. This matchup, I actually think my opinion on it is improving. Last time I did this, I think I put Terry in slight disadvantage, but I actually think this might be even. The more I play this matchup, the more I think it's not as bad as I thought, because initially I was really put off by Terry's fireball game. If you don't know, when Terry throws a fireball, because it travels along the floor, Aki can't actually punish it reliably with cower crouch dive, unlike normal fireballs. And that made like his fireball game very awkward for Aki to deal with. But once you free yourself from obsessing over cower crouch dive punishes and sort of learn how to control the fireballs in situations where like they both go past each other, like you throw Aki's fireball, Terry throws his, and they go past each other. There's lots of cool things you can do in that interaction. So I think this matchup has evolved a little bit. It's got a little bit easier for Aki, but I'm gonna say even. Are the placements ordered? No, not within a tier. Now for Broski's favorite character. This is tricky. This is actually a tricky one for me. This is a bad matchup for Aki, no doubt about it, but it's a question of how bad do I think it is. The problem is, when I'm playing against Mai, I'm just raging about this character. Like, if you guys watch me stream this game, whenever I play against a Mai, I always start a 45-minute rant about, like, EX ban and stuff. But I have to disassociate my thoughts on Mai, the character, and specifically focus on my thoughts on the Mai-Aki matchup. And I don't think it's quite as bad as these two. So as much as I despise Mai and everything she stands for, I think I'm going to move it up here. She does beat A.K.I. EX fan is obnoxious. Her pressure is very hard to deal with. If she gets level 1 stocked, you're probably lost. But at the same time, you can kind of zone her in neutral. Again, you could make an argument for either of these, but I'm going to stick it in slight disadvantage. There is some cool stuff you can do against Mai. Like, for example, if she throws a regular fan and you do light whip, the whip will actually destroy the fan and then punish counter her. There is some cool matchup tech you can use, but she's just such a gorilla, and she just forces her way in so efficiently that it's just not good for A.K.I. Elena has the Jamie problem, where she doesn't have good answers to slow fireballs, but also, unlike Jamie, she doesn't really gain them as the drinks come in. She's kind of free to slow fireballs in general, just like archetypally. Her anti-fireball move, the EX roll, is just not very good. Maybe she's up here? No, I don't think it's quite as bad as that, but I do think A.K.I generally controls Elena pretty consistently. The other thing is that the range that A.K.I wants to be in the mid-range against Elena, it's very difficult. Elena is another character where you can spam light whip more than others. Like, there are certain matchups where I feel like light whip in neutral is much more spammable. I think Elena is one of them. Finally. Okay, so this one, I do have to have a disclaimer here. Disclaimer, Sagat is still relatively new. He's only been out for a couple weeks, and I haven't played the matchup as much as I would like to. So this one is more of like a early impressions compared to the other matchups. It's a little bit early, so I don't feel super confident in calling this. But I think this is going to end up even, from what I can tell so far. It's kind of like the Terry matchup, where initially I thought this would be difficult because all of A.K.I.'s tools, which are designed to go under fireballs, don't actually work against low Tiger Shot. And that initial curve sort of like made me feel like uncomfortable. But again, as you start to like learn how to fight Sagat, you realize that you don't actually need the fireball war. You can kind of just win through footsies and light whip abuse against this character. Because low Tiger Shot is good in the matchup, it kind of bounces back on Sagat, where because you can't go under low Tiger Shots, that means that Sagat is more likely to throw them. And because Sagat is more likely to throw them, that means he's now vulnerable to jump-ins and DIs on reaction, and perfect parry. You can perfect parry Drive Rush to punish fireballs from a surprising distance. But there is some tricky stuff in this matchup, like Sagat Tiger Knee is quite annoying for A.K.I because a lot of A.K.I.'s best normals in neutral, things like Crouch Heavy Kick, are crouch normals. And that makes you vulnerable to Tiger Knee because Tiger Knee becomes plus on crouch. So I think right now it's probably even, but this one's still kind of a question mark for me. So that's my A.K.I matchup spread for Season 3 so far. We'll see what the future holds. As always, everything here is subjective. None of this makes any sense. I'm just one guy. Please don't yell at me. All right? We all understand? All right, thanks for tuning in. I will see you guys all in the next video.